so our goal, our purpose of life should be to pursue that unconditioned, that formless identity.
What? Purpose of life? Formless identity? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bartosz Explores. And today I got to talk with my good friend Ronald, Lydia, and Kimberley. We talked about the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And the book talks about how the ego can oftentimes interfere with our own purpose in life. Check out our conversation, and hopefully you'll be awakened too.
When you meet some people, like for the first time in a conversation, I'll ask you, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, the main goal why people ask others about them is that so that they can label them and see whether they will be a threat to their ego or they will feed their ego, right? Because if you say, I'm a PhD student, then I'll be like, yeah, you can fit in. Or if you say, I'm an undergrad student, then you're inferior than me. So our conversations will be different. He's like, all these things that we do is to find out whether this person will feed our false sense of self, of identity, or they will put us down. Mm-hmm. Now, after this book, I'm being like cautious. Some of the things I knew them, but now I've been even watching like my steps, even the way I talk to people. I'm like I keep having this voice that's saying, are you doing this because, changing talk based on who you're talking to? Why is that? Because you're trying to see either if someone is superior. He gives the example of how you talk to a janitor at your workplace versus your boss. It's like, they are both beings, but why do you talk to them differently? Because the boss will crush your ego, so he's superior to you. So you have to talk to them a certain way. So you're playing a role with the boss because they're all playing. You're playing a role with the boss because they're superior to you. The janitor, it's the same. You can talk trash on them, you can talk down on them because they are not in position of power, so they won't do anything to you. I find that very interesting. I usually don't tell people what I do until maybe someone is interested, because I realize every time I say I'm a PhD student, people be like, oh, and I'm like, but for me, it's a PhD. For me, it's not any different. I'm still Ronald, and when I interact with people and kids, you find me kids, teenagers, I'm like this wild, crazy guy. Because every time I mention that status of a PhD student, there's these people that immediately just rise you up, or see you as a threat. I don't know. But so I stopped doing that, until people ask me, no, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a student. I just say I'm a student. Until they go deeper, like what student where, then I'll tell them. But I don't, because I like when I interact with humans to just feel that we are both humans and we're just encountering each other and living life, not these other barriers.
Yeah, I think that's why I really appreciate doctors, that they're just like, no, my name is Kyle, or my name's Stacy. I'm not Dr. Stacy, I'm not Dr. Kyle. Just no, and same thing with teachers. I have had many teachers that are just no, call me by my first name.
Yeah.
That's just who I am. Don't call me Mr. So-and-so, or Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith. No, that's just who I am. This is just something I've achieved. It's, yes, it's something that takes years to accomplish, but, I'm still a human being just like everyone else.
I'm so glad you brought that up. We had this conversation with a professor. I was a TA for my first year, and she asked me, she's like, how do you want students to address you? I said, well, Ronald is my name. If you want to call me you can say Asimwe. I said, no, kiddo. She's a kiddo. We're not going to do that. She's older and she's pretty retiring. Yeah, she would call me kiddo. She's like, kiddo, these kids are going to disrespect you if you allow them to call your name. They should call you professor. And I said, well, I'm not ready to be called professor, and 2, I don't have a PhD, and 3, even if I have a PhD, I will not allow anyone to call me professor. He's like, yeah, are you fearing your title, you work for it, and these kids need to respect you? And we had a good conversation. I said, I don't believe respect is earned. I don't believe I have to work for respect. I believe someone will give you respect, regardless of whether you have the title or not. So I'll let my students, your students are not your colleagues. I'm like, yeah, I get all that political vibe in academia, but please let students call me Ronald. She wrote in my report, she's like, Ronald is not
not listen to constructive feedback.
You know, if we start to talk about those things that we have accomplished, we have all accomplished different things. School, work, you know. This guy owns a big business, so.
See, like, that's the thing though, like, when I tell people, all of a sudden, everybody, like people's, reaction, changes. They look at me differently as soon as I say, like, I have a business.
Yes.
It's just, that's why I try not to say it.
Yes.
I'm just a human being,
yeah.
Because then there are so many stereotypes that come in with, like, oh, he's a businessman, like, he's, probably an asshole, like, doesn't care about people, he's just all about, getting to the bottom line. It's just like, no. Ego wants to identify with something. Nationality, gender, occupation, something. And those things are the content. And so a very common one is especially in the US, our work. People talk about work-life balance. It's like, there should be life-work balance. Work is such a big thing. And it represents, who you are in a way. It almost can, some people I think mistake it for who they are.
Yeah.
So when they lose their job, they didn't just lose their job, they lost their
life practically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it starts when we're children. It's like the ego formation starts when we're children, because then our parents give us toys. You realize when a child loses a toy, their level of devastation shows you how much ego they have. And then when they become adults, then the toy kind of obsession becomes my house, my car. This is the thing he talks about here. He says the ego tends to equate having with being. I have, therefore I am. And the more I have, the more I am. The ego lives through comparison.
Yes.
And when I read that, I was like, and then he goes on and says, the ego's sense of self-worth is in most cases bound up with the worth you have in the eyes of others. You need others to give you a sense of self. And if you live in a culture that to a larger extent equates self-worth with how much and what you have, if you cannot look through this collective delusion, you will be condemned to chasing after things for the rest of your life in the vain hope of finding your worth and completion of your sense of self. And I was like,
I've done that. I've done that.
Yeah, I mean, same, because, and I've done, it's interesting because he talks about, that's why the book is called, the awakening of your life, because he calls this awakening. He's like, when you're not aware of something, then you're not awakened. Mm-hmm. So most of the things is we do them unaware. I don't know that's what I'm doing, but essentially that's what we are doing. I'm asking, I'm giving an example of tennis. If you're a tennis player, oh, I'll know, yeah, okay, well, you fit in my class. Then we can talk tennis. We can. What was interesting is that he said that's also the ego. Because then I have something to get from this person. We'll either play tennis together. Mm-hmm. We'll either, Yeah. But the comparison bit too was just all the things that you're searching for, you already are. He's like, you can never go out in the world to search for who you are. Because who you are is already in you. That's why it talks about the difference between the word human and being. That we're all beings. And being, that is where the human is. The human is the form thing that we do. Now, if we are touched, he talks about how man and humans, we've lost ourselves in thought and in identifying with, those forms, which is the human part. It's like, parents, therapists, doctors, it's fine to be the human. Those are the things the human does. Mm-hmm. But the being is the unconditioned part of you, and that is the true sense of who you are. So you already have it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go read books to find it. And I was like, well, yeah. To myself, okay, so then how do you get rid of the ego then if it's in identifying, with all these things? Then if I'm not those things, what am I? And really, I'm thinking about it, and then he said here, page 4, he said, there are people who have renounced all possessions but have a bigger ego than some millionaires. So, basically, I think for me, the whole chapter on the ego and the different forms of ego was the whole idea of the things we think sometimes gives us meaning. Mm-hmm. Most of the times are not the things that give us meaning. Mm-hmm. For me, when he talks about, my understanding of being at least was that this what we're doing here is the being. You know, yes, we have different backgrounds, experiences, but coming together to sit here and just like be here and talk and laugh and eat, that is it. That's not conditioned by, you know, anything. And so our goal, our purpose of life should be to pursue that unconditioned, that formless identity, instead of all these forms of identity that we kind of attach ourselves to.